Fiesta time in San Antonio. For a city like San Antonio, where it's always festive and vibrant, it's hard to imagine a time when this city could come alive and light up even more than usual. But for several weeks every spring, that's exactly what happens. Decades-old traditions and pageantry mixed with modern-day technology, and every year spectacles top the last. Visitors from all over the world come to take it all in and learn the true meaning of fiesta from our locals. 35 years ago this April, one fiesta event, the Battle of Flowers Parade, was forever changed by the actions of one man, a sniper who barricaded himself inside an RV and began firing into the crowd, targeting police officers and shooting several private citizens as well. This event changed the way many people think about the world-famous celebration, and it also changed the way the men and women of the SAPD patrol large events even today. This special edition of Behind the Badge commemorates the 35th anniversary of this milestone in San Antonio's history. It's not to remember the tragic crime itself, but to celebrate the actions of hundreds of people who survived the event in true San Antonio style. It's also a tribute to the officers of the SAPD and how we use every resource possible to ensure a safe and sound fiesta for citizens and tourists alike. Welcome to this special episode of Behind the Badge.
Thanks for joining us. I'm Officer Misty Floyd. I'm here at the intersection of Broadway and East Grayson Street. This is the location where the tragic event took place 35 years ago. Here in just a minute, I'll introduce you to Gary DeLon, a well-known figure in the broadcasting world with a career spanning over 5 decades. Gary, along with a fellow KENS 5 newscaster, brought us many of the images that to this day have become iconic of that dreadful event. In doing so, Gary put himself on the front line to bring news in living color to the citizens of San Antonio.
We're on the scene, ladies and gentlemen, of a reported shooting of at least 4 police officers, and we've seen at least 4 victims taken to these EMS units right here. Just a block away from us at Grayson and Broadway, sniper or snipers are at this moment firing from what is believed to be a recreational vehicle. Everybody has hit the ground, several hundred. We have maybe more than just a dozen wounded already. 3 or 4 police officers reportedly shot. We cannot give you a very good visual view. We're having to stay down. They've cordoned off this area. Panic has not hit, but just hysteria by all the ladies and their children. As 2 little babies, I saw one about 2 years old, shot in the neck and the chest, the other in the leg. At least 4 officers reported down, automatic weapon fire, it sounded like to me.
So Gary, we're out here at the intersection of East Grayson and Broadway, where 35 years ago, the unthinkable happened. Standing here today, can you tell me a little bit about how you're feeling?
Well, it's like the assassination of JFK. Something like that is indelibly inscribed in your mind forever. And you can almost recall moment by moment what you did and where you were and what happened and your emotions and just reporting what you could get. It's difficult to get facts of anything when everybody's shot. Mm-hmm. And when we pulled up here, we were within 75 feet, I guess, of the RV, which is right over here.
It was right over here?
This was the old Berggraf Tire Company.
Okay.
And Ira Atterbury had paid $10 to lease a parking spot. That's what they used to do.
Okay.
And so he had backed it in the night before, and with this evil intent, I guess. And for some reason, he had waited for the color guard to come through. He could have shot the color guard as well. But so after the color guard came through, that's when he opened the door and started shooting. And so shots were still being fired. And by that time, a lot of police officers were here. They didn't have a SWAT team per se in those days. So this one officer's on top of Berggraf firing tear gas canisters, attempting to get them into the van,
yes,
RV.
Okay.
So I was standing over here in mid-street, crouched down, And you could still hear the gunfire. And by that time, there was an Air Force bus parked right up the street.
I saw
and
the
they pushed
footage
it back
from
in
that.
order to provide protection for some of the people that were trying to escape.
Cancel it. Here comes another young lady that's being dragged, literally dragged to the front of the bus. We'll see if she's injured or what, or panic-stricken. She's being helped under her own power. Apparently it's hysteria, and that has stricken many of the people here. Oh, they were crying when we arrived at the scene, and here comes the bus being moved now from the location. We have not heard any fire from that RV for several minutes, indicating perhaps the police fire has done some good. We don't know. We'll let you know as soon as we can. We'll stay here. We're going to tell you again. We will keep live programming. I will take that journalistic license from this scene until we clarify the security of this scene.
Well, I think, and I've been on many scenes with officers, I think it's one of those instances where they too are trained to react, and they react to the action. And that's what they were doing, and you know, things have just kind of become faded over the years, but the officer that crawled into the RV by getting on his hands and knees, and that was a heroic, and we don't give that kind of credit to heroes like that. This is a battlefield here. This was a battlefield, and when you have that many wounded, and the potential is ever growing every second. So, you know, I was very pleased and very proud to be a part of this day when I saw the results of what San Antonio more men in blue those days than women, but what they did, and they didn't take any thought about being in danger. I mean, they didn't know how many guns this guy had, didn't know how many shooters there were, but here they were out in the open again. And so, and you ask every one of them, and they displayed no fear at all. I mean, they went to the scene to do what they had to do, and that's what they were trained to do.
The officer told me that maybe 4 to 5 police officers were hit.
They're not sure how many were hit or how many just fell to the ground. I know that if you've been, I don't know how close you've been up there.
As close as I want to get.
But
right
I know what you mean. They have been pulling the policemen 3 and 4 at a time, sometimes 2, have been pulling children. There were at one time dozens, literally dozens of people laying on the ground. They have one by one pulled them back so that the number of people there are very few. They were hiding behind some of those folding chairs, which was just amazing because it offered no protection at all.
This is why they brought in the bus, was to allow them a shield to crawl under the bus to get out of the line of fire.
Now
we have not heard any
shield.
fire from the last few minutes. They may have done some good with that fusillade of bullets that the cops above have fired into the RV when smoke started pouring from the RV.
And there are 2 things that visitors, San Antonians, parade goers, remember 2 things. 1, the police department is there for you, and 2, the cooperation and collaboration between the media and the police department. Without that, you have chaos as we would have had that day.
Right. I'm so glad that you were there to cover the story and to put out all of those details for people back at home and even, you know, just throughout the city. So you did a great job, and I'm really glad that you were brave enough to step up and do that.
Didn't think, even when I was in the Army, you never think about being brave or courageous. You just go do it. And if bravery comes out of that, that's good, but you don't think about it at the time.
That was awesome. Thank you so much
Thank
for
you,
coming
Mister.
out here. I really appreciate it.
We know that they told us at least 3 officers, maybe 4. Total of 18 have been taken to the hospital. 4 triage units set up here. It is now clear. It is now secure. It is okay. All right, we're going to wrap it up, Margot, and let you know that one man, the sniper, has created all the havoc, all the fury from that RV is now dead. The sniper is dead inside the RV. We don't know yet. All of the other victims will keep you informed to the seriousness of the injuries.
Police officers posted downtown during the event stood up to fulfill their oath to protect and serve on that fateful day. Several of those officers were met with gunfire in return. One memorable officer, retired Lieutenant Gary Nagy, was working on duty while his family attended the event. Lieutenant Nagy was shot, as well as his son, who was only 6 years old at the time of the incident. Here's Officer Roger Zuniga as he sits down with both father and son to talk about that day.
Thank you, Officer Floyd. Now, I'd like to introduce retired SAPD Lieutenant Gary Nagy and his son Shane Nagy. Gentlemen, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you.
We're talking about 1979, the Fiesta sniper shooting. Gentlemen, you both were there. Lieutenant Nagy, can you explain on that day kind of paint a picture to what you were doing, what your assignment was, and what you remember from that particular day.
Well, I was a traffic lieutenant, and I was in charge of the beginning of the parade. They call it the IP. And we were about ready to set up the Vanguard, which is the police chief's lead vehicle and the motorcycles leading the parade as they come out of the IP. And basically that's what I was there. I was in charge of that, the beginning of the parade.
Okay. And what happened that drew your attention? What happened that day that caught your attention? Or can you speak some more about that?
Well, we were discussing, we were out in the middle of the street at Grayson and Broadway, and we were, like I said, the parade was just getting ready to begin, and we were discussing, you know, how to set up the vehicles, when to start the parade. And then I heard a little pop, and I felt something, and really couldn't figure it out until I heard a second pop. It wasn't a loud bang, and I could feel an impact. And from that point on, I went to turn to ask the sergeant what was happening, and I found out that I couldn't walk. I just fell down in the street. And then I knew that, you know, I'd been shot. And as I was laying there, I was trying to get up, couldn't do it, and started to crawl towards a Jeep. And this officer, Byram, Albert Byram, I'll never forget this, came out into the middle of the street and grabbed my hand and dragged me behind the Jeep. And from that point on, I heard the shots being fired, large number of shots. And while I was laying on the stretcher, my wife, who I'd got prime seats for, my son and my daughter, come running over to the stretcher and grabbed a bottle of iodine and poured it all over me. Now, why she did that? She was a registered nurse.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. And then I sat there, and a few minutes later, I saw this police car backing up, and a patrolman back up between the gunman and where I was, and he jumped out of the car and pulled two other officers into the car, and then drove up next to the chief, and then got out and got the officers out that were shot. They were also shot. From that point, I could hear the shooting, and there were, you know, a fairly good number of policemen around that area by then. Then I noticed Officer Tommy Cavazos behind a barrel firing at the RV, or in that direction.
And at this point, did you realize exactly what was going on?
At that point, yes, I knew exactly what was going on at that point.
And you could tell where I'm sorry to interrupt. You could tell where the sniper was at this point?
Yes, I knew where the sniper was at this point, yes. Okay. Yeah.
And Sergeant Nagy, you were at the scene as well on this day. Can you tell us a little background about how old you were and where you were at in relation to the gunman, and what your thoughts are?
Yes, I was 6 years old. I was with my mom and my sister had a friend there. My sister, I believe she was about 13 years old. And we were laying on a blanket. We're sitting on a blanket about 25, 30 feet in the line of fire. Between the RV was on one side, the policemen were in the middle of the road, the intersection, and we were about 25, 30 feet behind the policemen, waiting for the parade to start.
Okay. And what do you remember from that day? Once you saw, did you hear any shots, or what was your first recollection if something was not right?
Well, I mean, right out of the gate, when you're 6 years old, you're waiting for the parade to start. I think it's fireworks and everything's great, and then all of a sudden, I'm looking out in the street, and my dad goes down. I think he was one of the first ones hit. Yeah, he was the first one hit, and he goes down. Another policeman goes down, and then crowd just starts going crazy, running. And then my sister and my mother and the other girl jump on top of me, because I was 6, to cover me. And then shortly after that, I believe an undercover detective grabbed hold of us kids, got us in the back of an unmarked car that was still out there in that intersection area, had us lay down, and then my mother ran to him to help him, and a few minutes after that, the detective had to told us we needed to get out of the car because the tires had been shot out and they couldn't drive it off. So he took us around a building or something. I can't remember exactly where they took us. I was 6 years old at the time, but I definitely remember the people running and the crowd going crazy, and see baby carriages left in the street, and you're 6 and you're thinking, wow, this is they're leaving babies out here. No babies were left, but you're at that age. Right. That's what I'm running, and I'm thinking my dad's dead, and my mom's ran out there and now she's gone. But those are the things that are running through your mind at that age.
I see.
Yeah.
Wrapping this up now, sir, what impressed you the most about your fellow officers that were out there on the scene at this day? What do you remember as far as being very impressive to you?
I'd say the main two things that I remember were Albert Byram, the officer, actually came out in the line of fire and grabbed me and dragged me behind the Jeep. And then James Middleton, patrolman, that got in the chief's car and drove it in between the 2 officers and the shooter, getting out of the car and actually saving those 2 guys, because they were just laying right in the middle of the street. So that's all the rest of the officers keyed on the motorhome fairly quickly after about a minute or so. We're directing fire at them from every angle. Like I say, there was a lot of guys. A
lot of heroics, it sounds like.
A lot of heroes out there, yes.
Well, I'd like to thank you both for being on the show today, and for sharing these thoughts and these images that you've kind of painted for us, the picture, so we can all understand it. I really appreciate y'all being on the show today. Incidents such as this are the very reason why the SAPD trains to the degree we do. The safety of our citizens is not something we take lightly. Sergeant Salazar sat down with Police Chief William McManus to discuss how training within the San Antonio Police Department has evolved since that fateful day.
Thank you, Officer Zuniga. As Roger mentioned, I'm here with Chief William McManus to talk about not only the tragic event from 35 years ago, but how we've evolved as an agency to plan for events like Fiesta. Like most San Antonians who lived here at the time, the Fiesta sniper incident left its mark on me. It was such a landmark incident that even though I was only 8 years old at the time, I can tell you exactly where I was and what I was doing at the time KENS 5 broke that story. Now, Chief McManus wasn't here 35 years ago when this happened, but he can certainly offer his own perspective on it. Chief, welcome to Behind the Badge.
Thanks, Sergeant. Appreciate it.
Chief, I know that back in '79 you were, probably a patrolman with DC?
Correct.
Okay. So, I know that you can speak to the differences in the way major departments like DC Metropolitan and the SAPD plan for major events like this. What sort of developments have you seen from then to now?
There's been a number of incidents in the United States that have impacted or affected the way police handle active shooting type events. There's also been a lot of developments in technology that help us out with those events. There's been different training, different ways to approach active shooting events and large, demonstrations with a lot of people. Okay, so we knowing that going into these big events, we know that that's a distinct possibility at any time. We try to minimize that by pre-planning. Can you tell us some of the stuff that we do here at the SAPD to pre-plan for Fiesta, with other agencies, with units within our department? There's a big emphasis on the event that you just talked about. We consider that our security up and down the whole parade route, trying to figure out entrances and exit routes, how to account for the volume of people that are packed from curb line to building line. We make arrangements for our SWAT unit, our plainclothes officers, K-9, securing the areas, before people come into them. Mm-hmm. So there's just a lot that goes into planning for these large events, given all the things that could happen and have happened in the past.
Okay, well, Chief, I mean, I know I've been here for 20 years, and I can honestly say that I've always seen, in my observation, Fiesta's kind of an all-hands-on-deck type thing.
It is all hands on deck, and even before all hands on deck, there's just a lot of planning that goes into the final product.
Sure, almost at the end of the last event, we start meeting for next year's events. Isn't that
sure,
correct?
We sure do. And also, we've got our Fusion Center, SARIC, and they're heavily involved in planning for the event and actually as a command point for the event.
Okay, and so it's almost the brains of the operation, so to speak, as we're going through Fiesta. I know that there's several pre-planning meetings, but in addition to that, Fiesta commanders stay in touch with each other throughout the event, throughout the timeline of Fiesta. Isn't that correct?
They do. Communication is a key to helping keep people safe.
Okay, good. Now, I know that in addition to all the officers that are out there from various units within the department, we've got SWAT that's been involved, the gang unit, POP unit, plainclothes officers. I know that we've got several citizen involvement programs that also help, that are just basically extra eyes out there on the parade route for us. The Explorers and the VIPs. Can you talk a little bit about those?
Right. Yeah, we have a great number of our VIPs or our police volunteers. They come in, they do great work. They take care of a lot of work. They're a bunch of extra eyes, sure. Exactly is what they boil down to. And our Explorers are out there, and they're very vigilant. They're in training, so to speak, but they're very vigilant for things that may not look right, things that seem suspicious, things that give them a gut feeling that something may be wrong.
Sure.
So between them and between our VIPs, we cover a little bit more area than we might with just our uniforms.
Sure. Now, what can the general public that's out there, what can they do, whether they're coming to a parade or coming to one of the other events at Market or Carnival, what can the general public do to help us help them to do what we do?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind is if a member of the, along the parade route, a member of the public sees anything suspicious or sees a suspicious package or a backpack going back to the Boston Marathon, they should let a police officer know. I recall when over at the Alamo Dome during the Canelo fight, there was a backpack that somebody deemed suspicious. They called police, let us know, and that whole section was cleared. And we found out that there was nothing in the backpack that was harmful, but as a matter of precaution, we were glad that they did that.
Sure. I mean, I know that over the years I've seen several incidents where, the bombing in the Olympics, the Boston Marathon, people saying, gosh, I saw that there and I just didn't say anything. So hindsight's 20/20. It's probably much better to say something and take the chance that it's going to turn out to be nothing and you might feel a little foolish than to have something happen that could have been prevented
sure.
just by saying something.
And it doesn't cost anything to let us know, and there's absolutely no reason to feel like you did something wrong or you overreacted. Correct. If in fact you do call and it turns out to be nothing. We'd rather it turn out to be nothing than something that wasn't reported and,
sure.
and something terrible happens.
Sure. So in short, if you see something, say something.
If you see something, say something.
Okay.
For sure.
That's certainly the mantra that we're chanting around here. If you see something, say something. It's a simple phrase. Chief, can you talk a little bit about what other type of initiatives we're doing as a police department around Fiesta? Maybe not necessarily at the events, but what other initiatives are we pushing right now to ensure that we make it through the Fiesta season and the rest of the year, for that matter, safe and sound?
Well, DWI comes to mind first and foremost. We're encouraging people to come down, celebrate, but celebrate responsibly. We don't want people coming down drinking and getting behind the wheel of a vehicle. That's number one. Number two, we just talked about it. See something, say something, anything suspicious, and you know, we would probably be putting out a good message if we were to tell folks, you know, hey, if you don't have to bring a backpack, don't bring a backpack. You know, a backpack is what held the explosive device.
Sure.
Up in Boston, everybody knows that. So the less, you know, you're carrying, the less anyone has to be suspicious about.
Sure, sure. Well, I mean, it sounds like as a department, we're ready for this this event or this series of events. Just long story short, Chief, is Fiesta safe?
It is one of the safest events anywhere in the country. Fiesta is absolutely safe. San Antonians are here to have a good time, period. That's all we want to do, and that's what we encourage. Come on down, have a good time. Be safe, feel safe. We're here to take care of it.
Well, you heard it here first from the Chief himself. Come down, enjoy everything that Fiesta has to offer. Let's just do it safely and responsibly. Chief, thanks for coming on today.
Thanks, Sergeant.
Well, we hope you enjoyed our special episode of Behind the Badge. We'd like to extend a special thanks to retired Lieutenant Gary Nagy and Sergeant Shane Nagy, and of course Ken's 5 and Gary DeLon. We would also like to give tribute to the 6 officers wounded in the line of duty with dozens of civilian casualties and the 2 young ladies who lost their lives that day. Fiesta just wouldn't be the same without the Battle of Flowers Parade. Now, despite that tragedy felt by so many those 35 years ago, in true San Antonio fashion, festivities continued that following night and still continue to this day. One other thing hasn't changed. As Chief McManus showed you, the men and women of the SAPD stand ready to ensure a safe and happy Fiesta for everyone now and for many years to come. Thanks for watching, and remember, Fiesta safe, San Antonio.
I got no pulse, so losing.
Sergeant, he's in Mayfair.
Shocking. Is it real all the time? Just had a few drinks. This can't be happening.
Are we clear?
Clear. We're just buzzed. Just buzzed? You didn't tell us that, sir. You're right. This isn't happening. He'll be fine.
I feel good.
Really? No, not really.
Buzz driving.
Clear.
Maybe we should stop acting like it's no big deal.
Shocking.
Playing in the WNBA takes a lot of practice, so I attend every practice to work on my game. I'm Danielle Robinson. You too should attend school every day because that's what it takes to be a winner. Whether you're in school or in sports, you need to show up to win. That's why I support SA Kids Attend to Win. And by the way, winners call me Danielle.
Tengo 20 años de ser oficial. En esos 20 años he visto muchas cosas, muchas tragedias que se podían haber evitado simplemente con abrocharse el cinturón. Por favor, abróchense el cinturón.